never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer. Fine.
Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It's a Wednesday, so of course it's time for another weekly Top 10 countdown that we do each and every Wednesday here on the channel. But before I get into this week's Top 10 countdown and tell you what it is, first let me quickly say that not only are we trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, but also, if you know anybody that has subscribed to the channel, please encourage them to watch the videos as well, because according to YouTube and YouTube World and the YouTube way of thinking, they consider it dead subscribers if you have a lot of subscribers but you don't get a lot of views on your videos, because they look at how many subscribers you have compared to about the average video content you get, and then they pretty much look and see how many dead subscribers you have. So it's not good to have a lot of dead subscribers, because YouTube looks at that and just thinks that you just have a lot of people that know you personally, so to help you out and help your channel, they've subscribed. But the way YouTube looks at it is they're really not helping your channel because they're not watching. The only way that they actually help your channel is to not only subscribe, but to also watch. So if you know anybody that has subscribed to the channel, please encourage them to watch the videos. But on to this week's Top 10 countdown, and before I tell you what it is, let me first say that I'm doing this because I was asked by my man Eric and my man Chris probably about 6 weeks ago, I guess it's been now, to start doing more countdowns that are based on my opinion and not what I get off of, certain websites and things like that. And of course you can't do that every single week, because you would eventually run out of topics, and I'm trying to make these weekly Top 10 countdowns last as long as I possibly can. It's been a little over a year now doing them, and we have not had to start repeating countdowns yet, so I'm trying to make it last as long as I can. So I cannot do my personal opinion on a countdown every week. I would run out of content quick. So I do usually do a top 10 based on a certain website or a certain magazine. But this week I am going to do a top 10 countdown that's my personal opinion. And if you follow the channel and watch the videos, you saw a video similar to this. I guess it's been probably mid to late February, when I talked about the top returning quarterbacks in college football. But it wasn't actually a countdown, and it wasn't even me thinking about any of the returning quarterbacks. I just went to, I want to say it was 24/7, but I might be wrong, but I went to one of the sports websites and got their opinion of the 12 or 13 returning quarterbacks and just wrote them down as I was reading them. And when I was reading them, they didn't have them listed in a certain order. They just had all the top returning quarterbacks. So I wrote them down and did a video talking about all the top returning quarterbacks. But this countdown is actually going to be Brandon Todd's top 10 quarterbacks in 2022 college football. Now, more than likely, 9 out of the 10 on here, I ain't even got to tell you who they play for because you already know. Because even if you're just a casual college football fan and you only watch a certain team or a certain conference or a certain channel, quarterbacks are hard to miss. If quarterbacks are good, you know who they are. You may not have watched them play, but you've heard their name. But there's one on here, and I'm going to say what team he plays for. But if you follow the channel, you already know because I actually mentioned him a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about some future great players in the world of college football. His name came up because I think he came from an unheard of school. He's actually transferred to a Power 5 school now. But like I said, this is Brandon Todd's the top 10 quarterbacks in 2022 college football. And I know a lot of people try to get offended if you don't have their quarterback on their team high enough. And everybody always tries to get mad and upset thinking, you're showing hatred toward their team or favoritism towards another team. But I think everybody knows by now that I don't show favoritism. I give my honest opinions. Heck, I'm a Clemson fan. You can see the big, huge national championship flag behind my head when I do these videos. And I don't have Clemson's quarterback on this list. So it's obvious and it's clear that I'm doing this based on my opinion, not based on what team you play for. But on to this week's countdown. Of course, as always, any thoughts on this, please feel free to let me know. So Eric and Chris should like this because it is a top 10 countdown that is my opinion. And one more time, it is Brandon Todd's top 10 quarterbacks in 2022 college football. Number 10, I have Dillon Gabriel, and I would put him a little bit higher on the list. I think he's great, but I think everybody else ahead of him is better than him. And not only that, he's transferring to a new school, so he's probably going to be playing for a completely different system. So we don't know what he'll do in the new system, but I still think he's a great quarterback. But you'll notice as I go along that most of the quarterbacks, if not all the quarterbacks, on my top 10 list are dual threat quarterbacks. So if you don't hear a quarterback's name that you think is a really good passer, then more than likely it's because of the fact he's basically just a pocket passer. And I try to do dual threat quarterbacks, not because I like seeing them more, but because the game of football has changed so much over the last decade. It used to be, you could be the best dual threat quarterback in the world in college. But if you got to the NFL and you couldn't throw, you weren't going to make it. But now there are several NFL quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson who can't throw. So the game of football has changed so much that it's almost better now to be a dual threat quarterback than it is a pocket passing quarterback if you want to make it in the NFL, because the NFL game now is played almost the exact same way the college game is. Number 9 is Cameron Ward, and he is the one quarterback that I will mention what school he plays for, and that is Washington State. And I mentioned a few weeks back, it might have been my Heisman Trophy video. All I know is that I did a video talking about Cameron Ward, and he was a quarterback to look out for in the future. He's transferred from Incarnate Word, or some people say Incarnate Word, but that is a small school just outside of San Antonio, Texas. And he was one of the best freshmen, if not the best freshman quarterback in the country. But since he played for Incarnate Word, nobody talked about him. But this year, if Washington State is on one of the 10:15 or 10:30 late Saturday night games on ESPN, I encourage you to watch because this kid is good. Number 8 is Tyler Van Dyke. Number 7 is Cameron Rising, and I think Cam Rising is a phenomenal name for a quarterback. But he was originally the backup last year in Utah, but for whatever reason, Charlie Brewer, even though Charlie Brewer did a pretty good job at Baylor, it just didn't click at Utah. So after about 4 games, Kyle Whittingham realized it was time to go ahead and go to Cam Rising. And I think Charlie Brewer has transferred again, and now he is at Liberty. Number 6 is Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker is actually going to be a not finalist, but he will get a lot of Heisman talk this year, and a lot of it has to do with that system that Josh Heupel uses at Tennessee. He's going to put up big numbers week in, week out. All he has to do is stay healthy, but I do think Hendon Hooker is a good quarterback. And before we crack the top 5, let's recap numbers 10 through 6. Number 10, Dillon Gabriel. Number 9, Cameron Ward. Number 8, Tyler Van Dyke. Number 7, Cameron Rising. And number 6, Hendon Hooker. And again, this is Brandon Todd's top 10 quarterbacks in 2022 college football for my good buddies Eric and Chris, who have both told me that I should do more opinionated top 10 countdowns. Number 5 is Will Levis. And Will Levis is actually a good quarterback. I know I poked fun of him all last year during the season, but it was nothing against him personally. It's just the system and the scheme that Mark Stoops runs at Kentucky. You can be the best quarterback in the world, and it's not going to matter because the system he runs, you're only going to have 120 passing yards a game just because the way he likes to play offense. So it was nothing personal against Will Levis. And according to a lot of people now, they actually have Will Levis as a top 5, not top 5 quarterback, but a top 5 pick in next year's NFL draft. So if you actually watch Kentucky, don't look at his stats because they're never going to be pretty. He's probably going to throw the ball 20 times a game, maybe, because all they do is run, which I've mentioned before, how that can be hurtful because when all you do is run the ball, if you watch Kentucky football at all, you'll know last year when they played Georgia, it was one of the ugliest games of the whole season. But that was because all Kentucky does is run the ball. And Georgia knew that. So Georgia was just putting 7 or 8 men in the box on every single play and stopping the run and forcing Kentucky to throw. And when all you do is run, and all of a sudden you can't run the ball, your offense is going to struggle because Kentucky doesn't work on passing during practice. When you practice, you try to perfect what you do. And what they do is run the ball. So in practice, what do? They run the ball. So when all you do is run the ball and all of a sudden the defense has stopped your running game, you struggle. And it comes across as, well, your quarterback sucks. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it is the case. But when the quarterback's used to throwing the ball, once every 8, 9, 10 plays, and now all of a sudden he's got to throw the ball every play, it can mess up your mental mindset in that game. So if you watch Kentucky this year, don't look at Will Levis's stats. Just watch him play. He's actually a good quarterback. Number 4, I've got Bryce Young, and I know that's a shocker. Most people think he's the best quarterback in the country. I don't. That's my opinion. I think he's good, but I think he's a little bit overhyped because of who he plays for, and that is, of course, Alabama and Nick Saban. But I watched their spring game, and in their spring game, I was not impressed with him at all. But I will say he is good. But also a lot of this countdown for me is quarterbacks that I think have the brighter upside as far as in the NFL. And that's why I have him at number 4 because I think all 3 guys ahead of him have a chance to be a whole lot better than he is in the NFL. Number 3, I have Phil Jurkovec, and most people are going to say, who is that? But he is the quarterback for Boston College, and he transferred to Boston College after a year at Notre Dame, and in 2020, he was really, really good. But last year, he got hurt. I believe it was in game number 3, And without him, Boston College's offense was absolutely abysmal. So he tried to rush it back and get back by week 10 or 11, but he was not healthy. So if you look at his stats from last year, they weren't that good. But if you just watch him play and see his pocket presence, he is a phenomenal quarterback. Number two, C.J. Stroud, of course. And in my personal opinion, the best quarterback in the country. And I've mentioned him and time again. I actually talked about how good he was last year during the college football season. I think he has a chance to have another great season. I think his team is returning 8 starters on offense and 9 starters on defense. I think on offense they lost their top 2 running backs and 1 offensive lineman, but they're bringing back everybody else from what was a great team last year. And yes, I'm talking about Devin Leary of NC State. He doesn't get the credit he deserves because of the fact he plays for NC State. But last year, I think he had something like 34 or 35 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. The man is a phenomenal quarterback. And don't be surprised if NC State has another 9 or 10 win season. And if they do, it'll be mainly because of Devin Leary. If he stays healthy all year long, he'll have some great stats, and NC State will have another great season. And just so everybody knows, if there was a few names on the list that you thought shouldn't be on there, please feel free to let me know. And if there was a few names that you thought I would mention that I didn't, let me go ahead and say my next 5 quarterbacks on the list. If I was going to do a top 15 list, I would have had Jackson Dart, Brennan Armstrong, Spencer Rattler, Will Rogers, and Sam Hartman. So I wanted to go ahead and do that video because of the fact college football is getting closer and closer and closer. And there are so many people now, whether it's magazines, radio hosts, TV hosts, other fellow YouTubers all across the globe now, there are more and more people that are doing their personal opinion of the top 10, top 15, top 20, whatever quarterbacks. So I figured I would go ahead and do one. As I said, it was for my good buddies Eric and Chris, who keep telling me that I need to do more videos that are my opinion. And about the last, I think, 4 or 5 weeks now, I've did top 10 countdowns that came off different websites. So I figured it was time to do one that was my opinion. I was actually going to go a whole other direction. I actually, ever since last Friday, thought I knew what top 10 countdown I was going to do. And then Tuesday at lunchtime, while I was eating lunch, I said, you know what? I'm going to talk about quarterbacks. And I just went in a completely different direction. Again, any thoughts on this, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. David Hasselhoff has started referring to himself as Huff. He says it's less of a hassle. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.